You ever have one of those moments where everything slows down? Like your body's still in motion, but your mind has wandered somewhere else entirely? That was me at the Harbor Pavilion that night, sitting next to my wife at a company dinner that was supposed to be about celebrating success, new contracts, future goals. I'd gone to support Ava, like I always did when her firm needed the illusion of work-life balance for their leadership team. Smile, shake hands, talk about local hiking trails. Pretend like we still belonged in each other's worlds. The pavilion was one of those modern glass and steel architectural showpieces by the Seattle waterfront. Ceiling like a greenhouse, air filled with warm lighting, and the distant hum of ferries slicing through Elliott Bay. Elegant, impersonal, expensive without trying too hard. Every detail about the evening was curated. String quartet, organic catering, a custom slideshow looping on screens around the room. I remember how the lights reflected off the windows like stars. I remember the sound of cutlery and voices rising over one another. And I remember the moment that changed everything. Ava had dressed sharp. She always did. Slim black jumpsuit, hair tucked back, eyes like she already knew the room would belong to her by the time dessert hit the table. She was good at this stuff. Charisma that made people lean in. The kind of woman whose laugh could tilt the balance of a conversation and make executives forget what point they were trying to make. I used to find it magnetic. Now it made me feel like an understudy in someone else's show. We were halfway through the main course, some deconstructed salmon thing with dill foam, when she reached into her clutch to check the time. And that's when I saw it. Just a sliver of an envelope, maybe 2 inches peeking out. The logo caught my eye first. A minimalist black tree on a cream background. I didn't recognize it at first, but then I saw the rest of the print. Alcia Ridge Ecolodge. I didn't want to be the kind of guy who jumps to conclusions. I really didn't, but something about it stuck in my brain like a splinter. The way she carefully slid the envelope deeper into her bag when she noticed me looking. The flicker of hesitation in her hand, so quick most people wouldn't have caught it. But I did. And then I noticed the details printed in that pale gray sans serif font. Reservation for 2. October 12th to 14th. Breakfast included. October 12th to 14th. That was last weekend. The weekend she said she had a stomach bug and wanted to stay in, remember? Said she was too wiped out to move. Then ordered takeout and told me not to come back early for my brother's birthday in Tacoma. Claimed she needed alone time, Netflix, tea, the works. I stared at that envelope like it was a ticking clock. Reservation for 2. While she was supposedly curled up in bed. I didn't say anything. Not then. I just sat there with a sudden pressure in my ears, like I was underwater. The rest of the room buzzed around me. Wine poured. Glasses clinked. Someone laughed too loudly at a joke that probably wasn't funny. And I felt myself starting to drift. That's when the screen flickered. They had a slideshow running, standard company fare. Photos of teams at white bars, site visits, charity events, the CEO at some award ceremony. It was just background noise until it wasn't. I saw Ava. In one of the images. Only for a second, maybe 2. But it was unmistakable. She was stepping out of a cab. It was night. She was smiling. And beside her, just behind her shoulder, was a man I didn't recognize. Younger, sharper edges. Maybe early 30s. He had a messenger bag slung across his chest and a hand on the small of her back. They were laughing, their faces lit by the yellow spill of a street lamp. Neither of them looked tired or sick or remotely interested in herbal tea and isolation. No caption. Just a photo, part of the rotation. It vanished quickly, replaced by a bar graph showing quarterly projections. But it didn't matter. I'd seen it. And I wasn't the only one. The air around our table turned still. A kind of hush, like people were suddenly aware of themselves. I heard the shift, the sound of someone clearing their throat, the scrape of a fork against a plate, the way someone 2 seats down stopped mid-sentence. Just for a beat, a pause. Enough for me to know they'd seen it too. Then Ava did what she always does. She filled the space. With ease, she waved her hand toward the screen like it was no big deal. "Oh," she said with a chuckle. "That was from that weird offsite Leo's team dragged me to. Don't ask. Total chaos." Her voice was light, practiced. Everyone relaxed a little. Then she turned to our table and added, Daniel opted out. He's not exactly into the networking scene. He's more of a garage and sawdust guy. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I think if he could move into a lumber aisle at Home Depot, he would. Polite chuckles from the table. Not real laughter. The kind people give because they're supposed to. No one wanted to be in the middle of whatever this was. No one wanted to ask questions. And just like that, she pivoted. She clicked her remote and brought up her next slide. Team evolution. Leading through disruption. Just like that, the room followed her lead. The show continued. I pushed back my chair. Slowly. Quietly. I didn't say a word. Ava didn't look at me. I walked out through the glass doors onto the cold stone patio, into the evening air that smelled like sea salt and distant rain. I stood there for a minute, watching ferries cross in the distance, their lights dim through the fog. A couple nearby was laughing about something, wine glasses in hand. I felt like a ghost moving through a memory that wasn't mine anymore. What do you do with a moment like that? A moment that confirms something you haven't wanted to admit to yourself? I'd suspected. In flashes. Late nights. The way she kept her phone on silent. The way she started saying we in reference to her team a little too often when she meant Leo and I. The new perfume. The absences. But that night didn't leave room for speculation. That envelope, that photo, that little performance of hers, they weren't red flags anymore. They were facts. And facts have weight. She'd made me into a punchline. Turned my loyalty into something disposable. Framed my quiet support as something stifling. And the worst part? She was so polished about it, so unfazed, that I realized this wasn't new. It wasn't impulsive. It was orchestrated. I walked toward the parking garage, hands in my coat pockets, trying to remember when I'd stopped being part of her world and started being something she needed to explain away. The city pulsed around me. Cars, crosswalks, neon signs flickering in windows. But all I could hear was her voice, light and easy. He's more of a garage and sawdust guy. As if that made me invisible. As if that made her shine brighter. I didn't look back. After that dinner, everything changed. Not because Ava confessed. She didn't. Not because we had a fight, there wasn't one. It changed because I stopped lying to myself. I'd spent years giving her the benefit of the doubt, brushing things off, playing the role of the calm, grounded partner while she soared in her career. I told myself she was just busy, driven, independent, the very things I'd loved about her in the beginning. But that night at the pavilion, that broke something open, or maybe it just cleared the fog. The next morning, I got up early, not because I couldn't sleep, but because I didn't want to see her. I made coffee quietly the way I always did. She came out of the bedroom in one of her expensive robes, hair pinned up, already tapping out emails on her phone. "Morning," she said like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't publicly humiliated me in front of her colleagues. Like I hadn't walked out of her life for an hour while she kept giving her presentation as if I were an afterthought. I nodded and took my coffee to the garage. That became a habit, hiding in plain sight. I didn't say anything for days. Instead, I started watching. Really watching. And once I let myself believe what my gut had been whispering all along, it was like someone flipped a light switch. Everything was suddenly visible. Her phone, for starters. It used to ring like anyone else's, buzzing on the counter, pinging from the nightstand. Now it was always face down, always on silent. And it wasn't just absent-minded. She'd glance at it too quickly when she thought I wasn't looking. Screen lighting up with muted notifications that disappeared before I could catch a name. One morning, I walked into the kitchen while she was mid-text. She locked the screen so fast it looked like a reflex. Then came the new perfume. Not her usual scent. This one was lighter, sweeter, like something a younger woman might wear. I noticed it on her scarf one day when I picked it up from the floor, and it wasn't just sprayed. It was embedded, like she'd been wearing it all day, not just a spritz before leaving the house. When I asked about it, she laughed it off. Oh, it was a sample. Some influencer collab thing. Everyone in the office is trying it. Right? Of course. That week she bought new clothes, too. Not in bulk, just a few pieces. Designer labels, stuff I hadn't seen her wear before. She charged them to our shared card like it was nothing. Which, to her, maybe it was. But I noticed. I tracked it. There was a $420 transaction from a boutique she said she didn't even like. I just needed something last minute for a client lunch, she told me, dropping the shopping bag in the hall like it was beneath her. But it was a dress she never wore at home. One of those form-fitting, sharp-line things she used to say were too much for a sit-down. The pieces started to add up fast. She started having more working breakfasts, always on weekends. She never ate much in the morning before, but now she was gone by 8 a.m. Some Saturdays claiming to meet with clients or her team for strategy sessions. She never invited me, never mentioned where they were. Just vague names like Greenlight or that fundraising account. She'd come home around noon smelling like cappuccinos and lilac lotion that wasn't hers. Then there were the drives. Late-night ones. Clearing her head was what she called them. She'd grab her keys around 9:30 p.m. and say, "I just need some air. Don't wait up." At first, I assumed she meant the grocery store or one of those overlook parks she used to love during college. But it was always the same pattern. Gone for just over an hour, returning in a better mood. I once checked the odometer. She'd clocked 46 miles. That's not just air. That's a round trip somewhere. And it kept happening. Same days, same time, like she was on a schedule. Her laptop became password locked, which it never was before. She used to leave it open on the kitchen table, half a dozen tabs running, news, spreadsheets, slideshows. Now it shut itself down like a bank vault every time she stepped away. And during video calls, she started taking them behind closed doors. That bothered me more than I expected. She claimed it was for privacy, but I knew her work. Half her job was talking to vendors and partners she barely liked. Since when did that require locking herself in the guest room and putting on lipstick? Then I saw it, a second toothbrush cup in the bathroom. It wasn't subtle. Her side of the sink had always been cluttered with serums and masks, but this was deliberate. An extra ceramic cup, identical to mine. Inside, a new toothbrush. Blue handle. Not mine. I didn't say a word. Just stared at it for a full minute like it might explain itself. In the passenger side of her car one day, I found a small receipt tucked between the seat and the door. She'd borrowed my car that weekend because hers was acting up. The receipt was from a boutique hotel across the water, Halcyon Grove Retreat. Not the kind of place you crash for business. No, this one was more curated. And the line item? Spa set for two. It even listed the time, 4:18 p.m. Saturday. Right around when she said she was stuck in traffic. I started checking our shared calendar more closely. She didn't think I used it much. She was right until I did. That's when I found it. A note for Thursday afternoon, blocked off with nothing but the initials L+M, lake check-in. She never mentioned any lake trips to me. We hadn't gone anywhere together in months. I clicked it open. The event was created at 11:43 p.m. the night after one of her late drives. From that point on, it became less about suspicion and more about confirmation. I started keeping my own notes, a notepad app buried on my phone. Every odd thing, every inconsistency, every date and time. I didn't want to believe I was doing it. I hated that I had become the guy tracking his wife like a detective, but I couldn't unsee the signs. And once you start documenting betrayal, it's only a matter of time before the mosaic takes shape. It wasn't just infidelity I feared. It was irrelevance. I felt like a placeholder in my own home. Fixture. The guy who fixed the garbage disposal, who handled taxes, who bought birthday cards for her parents. She still kissed me goodbye most mornings. Still asked if I needed anything when she went out. But it was mechanical. Habit, not care. And the worst part? She was good at it. Too good. Sometimes I'd watch her from across the room and wonder if I'd ever really known her. If she had always been capable of this, or if something had changed. If I had changed. Was I just missing something fundamental? Had she outgrown me while I stood still? I began wondering what I'd do if she confessed. Would I explode? Would I cry? Would I thank her for finally telling the truth? But she didn't confess. She just kept weaving the lie. And I kept collecting thread. The thing about doubt is it gives you room to hope. As long as something isn't confirmed, you can spin it, rationalize it. You can lie to yourself and call it love, or loyalty, or trust. But once you see it, really see it, the illusion shatters like glass. No sound, no mess, just sharp little edges everywhere. And your feet already bleeding before you know you've stepped through something broken. It happened on a Friday. The week had been quiet, and by quiet, I mean eerie. Ava had been extra affectionate. Light touches on the shoulder, long looks over dinner, a tone that felt almost nostalgic, like she was trying to rewind something without asking for permission. The kind of thing someone does when they're about to cash out emotionally but want to leave a warm footprint behind. She told me she was flying to Dallas that weekend. Strategy Summit. Her team was launching some regional campaign, and she'd been voluntold to lead the weekend sessions. I nodded, as I usually did, and asked her if she needed help packing. She said no. Friday morning, I dropped her at the airport. She gave me a soft kiss and told me not to stress while she was gone. Said she'd text when she landed. I watched her walk through the sliding doors with a wheeled carry-on and that sleek black coat she only wore on business trips, the one I'd bought her when she got promoted. I didn't drive home. I parked at a nearby lot and sat there with the engine off, staring at the departure screen in the terminal through the glass. Her flight number wasn't there. I double-checked. Opened the airline's app. Nothing. So I checked our bank account. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Maybe coffee at SeaTac, a lift to the hotel in Dallas. Something small and time-stamped. Something benign I could latch onto to say, "See? You're just being paranoid. She's in Dallas. She's working." What I found was a digital receipt from Alcia Ridge Ecolodge, the same place from the envelope at that dinner. A reservation for 2, booked under her name. Check-in 3 p.m. that afternoon. Special request, late checkout corner suite. The lodge was on Lake Vashon, 42 miles from our house. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even curse. I just sat back, opened my Maps app, and typed in the address. 1 hour, 15 minutes. That's how long it took to drive there. Not counting the time I sat motionless in the car at a gas station halfway there, thinking, are you really doing this? But I kept driving, because some truths need to be seen, not heard. The lodge sat at the end of a winding road surrounded by pine trees and the muted hush of October. No neon signs, no flashy branding. Just a slate stone driveway, dim lanterns, and a small wooden sign carved with cursive script. Welcome to Alcia Ridge. Breathe in, let go. I parked on the upper level, tucked behind a row of rental SUVs. My car faced a hill that overlooked the main walkway to the check-in area. I turned off the engine, cracked the window, and waited. The air smelled like moss and cedar. Couples wandered the path holding hands and murmuring over wine glasses. I watched them pass, ordinary people, wrapped in fleece and early winter jackets, unaware they were part of someone else's story. Then I saw her, Ava, walking up the path, dragging the same carry-on from that morning. Only this time she wasn't alone. The man from the slideshow photo, Leo. Him. They didn't look nervous. They weren't sneaking. They looked comfortable, familiar. Her arm brushed his as they laughed about something, like this was their tradition. His hand on the small of her back again. Her hair up in that effortless way she always did for weekends away. No disguises. No shame. They reached the front desk. I couldn't hear them, but I didn't need to. The receptionist smiled, nodded, typed something, then handed over a keycard. Just one. Ava slipped it into her coat pocket. Leo picked up the bag. They walked off together toward the far end of the property, where the private suites were. I followed in my car at a distance, wheels crawling like I was trying not to wake the trees. I parked behind a maintenance shed and watched them climb the stairs to a corner unit with a balcony facing the lake. The lodge had large windows, curtained but not drawn yet. Inside, warm golden light glowed from sconces and a fireplace flickered in the corner. Their silhouettes passed across the glass. I couldn't move, couldn't blink. Ava leaned in close to him, her head tilted, His hand rose to brush her cheek. They disappeared for a moment, likely into the bedroom, and then the curtains closed. That was it. No denials. No excuses. No, it's not what it looks like. It was what it looked like. I sat there for what felt like an hour, the weight of it slowly sinking into my bones. Not a crash, not a scream, just a kind of stillness. Like watching your house burn from across the street, knowing the photo albums are still inside, and you can't do a damn thing about it. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the detail, the planning, the fact that it was so easy for her, so practiced. She didn't lie out of panic. She lied out of habit. I tried to think about what came next. Should I confront her now? Pound on the door? Make a scene? Demand answers? But I knew better. She'd just twist it, deflect, cry. Say things like, "You don't understand what I've been going through," or "You've been so distant," or the classic, "It was a mistake." No, she didn't get to control the narrative anymore. So I left, drove out of the parking lot as quietly as I had come in. The road back wound through the trees, past cabins with soft lights glowing in the windows. People in warm socks and flannel blankets, sipping wine and watching the fire. And me? I drove past it all like a ghost, headed back to a house that wasn't a home anymore. It was funny, in a cruel sort of way. We used to talk about weekends like this, little escapes, quiet places by the water. I always said we didn't need anything fancy, just time. She agreed. Or at least she pretended to. I think that was the part that broke me the most. Not just that she cheated, but that she used our dream to do it. That lake, that lodge, it was one of the places I had once saved on my browser. For an anniversary, I remember showing it to her, and she used it with him. The drive back from Lake Vashon felt longer than the one there, even though it wasn't. Same roads, same turns, but everything had shifted. Somewhere between that parking lot and the I-5 on-ramp, I stopped being Ava's husband. I hadn't said the words out loud, hadn't even written them down, but something fundamental broke in me during that silent hour behind the wheel. There was no more room for maybes. No, let's talk about it, or we owe it to our marriage. I didn't want an explanation. I didn't want closure. I just wanted distance, clean, quiet, and final. I pulled into our driveway around 10:20 p.m. The porch light was off. The house was dark except for the glow of a salt lamp in the hallway, the one Ava had ordered from some eco-site last year when she was resetting her nervous system. I stood outside the front door for a moment, hand resting on the knob, breathing in the cold October air. I already knew what I was going to do. Once inside, everything felt strangely preserved. Her shoes by the door, the scarf she always forgot to hang up, a coffee mug half full on the kitchen counter, the kind that still had the faint imprint of her lipstick. My jacket hung neatly on the hook next to hers, like we were still a unit, still one of those together couples. But we weren't. We hadn't been for a while. I walked into the bedroom and opened my side of the closet. I didn't need much, just the essentials: passport, birth certificate, a few shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, my hiking boots, the watch my father gave me when I turned 30. I took my old flannel jacket too, the faded navy one with a frayed cuff. Ava used to mock it whenever I wore it out. "You look like you got lost on your way to a lumberyard," she'd say, laughing. I packed it anyway. Felt symbolic. In the garage, I pulled down my tool chest from the shelf. I'd inherited it from my dad. All the tools were wrapped in an oily old towel, the kind that smelled like sawdust and motor grease. She always hated the way they cluttered the workbench. "You treat this garage like it's a sanctuary," she once snapped. I guess it was. I placed everything carefully in the trunk of my car, one item at a time. Not rushing, not sneaking, just moving. It was the calmest I'd felt in months. Inside, I stood in the kitchen for a moment, staring at the fridge. She had pinned a calendar magnet from her firm next to a postcard from Paris we never sent. Just a blank card with a watercolor skyline and the words "Wish you were here" in cursive font. Felt ironic now. Ava had gone to Paris for work last spring. Alone, she said. Conference. She came back with that postcard and a bottle of wine I never opened. I took the magnet down, left the postcard. Then I reached for a pen and paper from the drawer near the microwave. I wrote exactly 11 words. You wanted space, now you have it. I'm done, Ava. I didn't sign it. I folded the note and left it in the middle of the kitchen counter, right next to her half-drunk mug of tea. I wanted it to sit there like a punctuation mark at the end of whatever we'd been pretending to be. No yelling, no voicemail, no dramatic confrontation, just silence and choice. I backed out of the driveway at 11:07 p.m. Headlights off until I hit the street. I didn't have a destination yet, just a direction. North. I ended up in Bellingham, pulling into a parking lot near the marina just after midnight. I called Nate, old college friend. We hadn't talked much in the last few years, not since he left the city and bought that boat repair shop up here. But when he answered the phone, voice groggy, surprised, I said, "You still got that extra room above the shop?" He paused for maybe 2 seconds before saying, "Yeah, get your ass over here." And just like that, I had somewhere to land. The room was small. A converted office space with a pull-out couch, a crooked desk, and one of those electric kettles that barely works but still pretends to. I didn't care. It was quiet and clean, and no one else's perfume was on the pillows. That first night I didn't cry. I thought I might, but I didn't. I just lay there in the dark listening to the hum of the marina outside, the distant clang of metal against wood, the cold wind tapping at the window like it wanted to come in. And in that stillness, I realized something. The silence wasn't empty. It was peaceful. The next morning, Nate handed me a coffee and said, "You don't have to talk about it." I nodded. "But when you do," he added, "start with how long it's been broken, not just when it fell apart." That stuck with me. Over the next few days, I started helping him out at the shop. It was mostly grunt work. Sanding hulls, replacing water pumps, cleaning tools, climbing in and out of fiberglass skeletons in greasy overalls. My hands cracked from the cold. My back ached by noon, and I'd come home smelling like a combination of gasoline and algae. But I slept. God, I slept. 8, sometimes 9 hours. Like my brain had finally been allowed to shut down. No buzzing. No alarms. No pretending. In the evenings, I'd scrub the grease off my hands and sit on the little balcony above the shop, drinking tea from an old chipped mug Nate had lying around. He'd join me sometimes. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. Just watched the lights blink across the water. I told him bits and pieces as the days passed. Not everything. Just enough. He didn't act shocked. Didn't offer cliches. Just listened. The hardest part was realizing how long I'd been lonely. How much space had already formed between Ava and me before Leo ever showed up. He wasn't the cause, just the symptom. The permission slip she gave herself to stop pretending she loved the version of me that didn't fit her story anymore. And maybe I stopped loving the version of her that believed ambition meant outgrowing the people who rooted for you. I don't know. What I did know was this. I didn't want her apology. I didn't need the breakdown or the explanations or the list of reasons. I didn't need her to cry or scream or beg. I needed a new beginning. One that didn't have her name on the lease. That weekend, I bought a cheap cot for the office room and rolled up my shirt sleeves like it was my job, because in a way it had become one. The shop became a rhythm. Morning repairs, afternoon test runs, evenings cleaning up. Boats came in wrecked and left restored. It felt symbolic in a way I didn't say out loud. By the end of the second week, I'd forgotten to check my phone more than once. The buzz of it had stopped controlling me. Messages came in, some from Ava, some from mutual friends, but I let them sit. I wasn't ready to open the past again. I wasn't sure I ever would be. And for the first time in what felt like years, that wasn't terrifying. It was freedom. You don't realize how loud a person's presence is until they're gone. Not just physically, but out of your daily rhythm, out of the morning habits, the background noise, the calendar alerts. I expected things to feel chaotic after I left Ava. I braced for fallout, for mess. But what I got was something I hadn't felt in years. Stillness. When I woke up in that room above Nate's workshop each morning, I didn't hear her voice in the hallway or her heels on the hardwood floor. I didn't hear the sound of her blender screaming through the kitchen at 7 a.m. or the click of her office door locking just before her first call. The only sounds were the creak of the old beams in the ceiling, the groan of boat hulls shifting in their cradles, and the occasional screech of a seagull outside the marina. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't wake up anxious. Back in Seattle, I knew Ava would return from the lake eventually. Maybe she'd expect a fight. Maybe she'd expect a note, or some cold conversation waiting in the living room. What she found instead was absence. I left nothing behind except the most essential pieces of myself. I didn't leave socks in the drawer or a coat in the closet. Not even a toothbrush. I even took the wedding photo from the mantel. Ava came home to a clean apartment and a note. You wanted space, now you have it. That was it. She didn't know where I'd gone. I didn't give her that gift. I knew her well enough to guess how she'd react. First, denial. Then confusion. Then control. She'd reach for the narrative like she always did, trying to frame things through her lens before I had a chance to reclaim my side of the story. But she couldn't find me, and that silence, it unnerved her. At first, it was just text. Short, polite. Daniel, can we talk? Where are you? I think you're overreacting. Please, let's be adults about this. Then came the longer ones. Pages, sometimes. Messages that shifted in tone by the day. Rational, pleading, apologetic, manipulative. Sometimes all in the same paragraph. One night she wrote, You knew we were drifting. You felt it too. Don't act like this is some blindsided betrayal when we've both been on autopilot for years. Another time, You don't understand what it's like to feel invisible in your own home. I didn't reply. Not once. That was the most powerful thing I could do. Not block her. Not rage at her. Just let her words vanish into a void that didn't answer anymore. She tried calling. Left voicemails I never listened to. Tried emailing, personal account, work account, even sent a message to the contact form on Nate's business site under the fake name M. Rivera, asking about repair services. Nice try. I watched from a distance as she unraveled, not out of joy, but out of confirmation. Confirmation that the version of me she thought would always be there had packed up and left without flinching. She had lost control and she knew it. Meanwhile, my life started to take shape again. Quietly. Slowly. I didn't mean to become a mechanic full-time. At first, it was just a way to stay busy. Fix an outboard motor here, patch a hull there. But word gets around fast in places like Bellingham. A guy who shows up early, keeps his head down, and doesn't charge stupid rates? That guy gets work. Nate set me up with my own corner of the shop. A real workbench. A tool wall. He even painted over an old door sign and replaced it with mine. Daniel Cole, Marine Systems Specialist. I laughed when I saw it, but something about it made my chest ache in a good way. Like I'd found something buried under years of dust. I started getting contracts. Word of mouth mostly. Small marinas, yacht clubs, weekend sailors who didn't want to haul their boat 2 towns over for a tune-up. My hands were always stained. My arms sore, but it felt honest. In the evenings, I sat on the balcony above the shop with a notebook and sketched. Not anything serious. Just ideas, the kind I used to play with in college before real life convinced me there wasn't time for hobbies. Boat layouts, cabin mods, a little floating home I dreamed of one day building from scratch. I hadn't drawn anything in years. The silence stopped feeling empty. It started feeling full. That winter, I rented a small bay for myself in the back of the shop. Just a place to work without interruption. I invested in a set of custom tools with my own money and paid Nate rent without him needing to ask. He tried to wave me off the first time. Said, "You've been through enough. Don't worry about it." I told him I needed to. Not because I was ungrateful, because I was done being someone's dependent variable. He nodded. Said nothing. That's why we're friends. Ava kept writing. Her messages changed shape. Now they were remorseful, filled with half-admissions and spiritual language. She talked about therapy, about realizing things, about patterns of detachment and childhood fear of abandonment. She started ending emails with lines like, "I know I hurt you, but I still believe in us." She had lost the right to use that word. I didn't respond. There were moments, I'll admit, when I almost did. Weak moments. When I'd come home bone-tired, open my inbox, and see a subject line like, "Do you remember the lake house plan?" Or, "Please, just read this one." Sometimes I'd hover over the message, finger twitching, just curious enough to want to peek. But I never opened them, because I knew the second I did, she'd take that as a signal, an opening, and I was building something that didn't need her blueprint anymore. By early spring, I realized I hadn't said her name aloud in over a month. That felt like a milestone. I went hiking again. Nothing extreme, just trails near the sound. I'd pack a sandwich and sit by the water, watching the boats move in and out of the harbor. Sometimes I'd sketch. Sometimes I'd just sit. My phone stayed in the glove box. One day, while fixing a rudder for a 70-year-old named Harold who cursed like a pirate and tipped in cash, I realized something that almost made me laugh. I was content, not healed, not over it, but whole. Ava hadn't broken me. She had revealed what had already been splintered. And now, I was shaping a new version of myself. Not polished, not ambitious, not the kind of man who fits neatly into a LinkedIn profile, but real, useful, solid. I had no plans to go back to Seattle. That apartment didn't feel like mine anymore. If she wanted it, she could keep it. I made a few calls, set up a clean split of our accounts, transferred my name off the lease. She sent one line back. "So it's really over?" Yes, though I didn't send that. She could live with the echo. Months later, I returned to the same waterfront pavilion, this time not as a guest, but as a partner. My name was on the program. Ava was there too, alone. Rumors swirling about a failed deal and Leo's exit. Our eyes met. She looked like someone watching a door close for good. I smiled politely, then turned back to my circle. For the first time, she wasn't the center of the room. I bought a small house on Whidbey Island. Quiet mornings, coffee, sea air. Ava still sends messages. Apologies, reflections, half-hopeful ramblings. I never reply. The life we had is gone. And what I've built since then, peaceful, steady, honest, is untouched by her waves. She lost more than a husband. She lost the world where she was once everything. I didn't just survive. I landed somewhere she can't reach.